Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of LiRmedia.tv. And LiR Confidential is our program, and our email is info@lirmedia.tv if you want to make any comments on the show. Now, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome on the show today Alison O'Reilly. Hi, Alison, how are you?
Hiya, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
You're certainly looking more healthier than I am anyway in this lockdown. That's because I can't get my hair cut.
Oh no, listen, I'm like Rapunzel. It's nearly down to
Yeah,
the feet.
but you put up all these other. I can't put up all these things anyway. It doesn't matter. Alison, for people who don't know you, you grew up in Drogheda. What kind of family environment would you describe it as? You know, that you grew up in. What I mean by that, people around you were very supportive. Was it happy and that whole environment? You know.
Yeah, yeah. No, I had a very nice upbringing. I am the third in a family of five. There's my mum, my dad, my sister Jean, my brother Brian. I'm 16 months younger than him, and then there's my sister Maria, who's 6 years younger than me. I grew up in Newfield in Drogheda, and my mum is from RD, and my dad is from Drogheda Town, Nell. And I suppose it was difficult for my mother because she's a very quiet woman who came from Stikillen in RD, very, very quiet, keeps herself very much to herself. And my friends were always terrified of her. They said she'd a scowl in her face and she'd open the door and say, "No, Alison's not here." But actually my mother is a very nervous person. And so she disguised it with maybe a frown, and that terrified all my friends. But it was difficult for my mom to move from the middle of nowhere into Drogheda, where it was a new housing estate, kids everywhere, new families, go, 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 the door being knocked all the time, and 4 children. So I do understand that pressure that my mom was under. And eventually when myself and Brian, we did our junior cert, which was the inter-cert, and the leaving at the same time, we came home one day and my mother was gone. And she'd left, basically. And she went from, my mom went from being, the most dedicated textbook mother, breakfast, dinner and tea, proper meals, proper Clark shoes, proper school books, proper everything. And we were all on a shoestring budget, the 80s, the whole lot. Got us through school. Education was a massive thing for my mum because she didn't have that opportunity. And she was the second eldest in a family of 13 children. And my mother was gone. And the dinner wasn't there. And there was a sense of a cold feeling in the house. Where's Mum? This is not normal. Something's wrong. And my dad came home from work and said, "Your mother's moved out to the countryside. She's going to leave this house. She's going to find another house." My dad happened to have the keys to his sister's house, which was just lying there in the country and in bits. And she still hasn't come home to live in it. But my mum must have phoned her up and said, "Can I move in here? I'm going to buy somewhere. I'm leaving Newfield, but I need to go now." And so Mum had moved out to Tullyallen, not far from where we were. And my dad was like, "Well, you needn't think I'm going out to the countryside. Drogheda, man, you must be joking." And that evening he was gone after her. So me and Brian stayed in Newfield, and
your dad and the rest moved out.
They were all gone. And next thing, the for sale sign was up, and
there's a book, Alison, there's a book in that,
And eventually we moved out, but I mean, it was a nightmare because none of us were driving. We were able to walk into Drogheda Town, then suddenly your mother was in the country. That was miles away. You couldn't walk out there, and you certainly weren't going to cycle.
That was a good couple of miles away from town anyway.
Yeah. So she went out there. She brought this empty house to life. She really came to life. She was she was, my mom always loved the garden, All of my nanny's children are extremely talented with flowers, the garden.
Yeah.
They could turn their hand to anything.
Yeah.
And she just brought this whole area to life. Flowers everywhere. She was in the thick of it. And my dad, had to drive a little bit further to work every morning. And as my mother said, I don't care. My children are reared now. Maria went with her because she was still in secondary school. And myself and Brian were like, at that age where this is really not cool, but you still needed to have food in the fridge, and mom's cooking wasn't there.
Yeah.
So we all eventually straggled after her, and she led the way.
Well, I would guess, I'm only guessing, Alison, that your mum recognized herself, I'd say, earlier before anyone in that environment did, that for her well-being, her mental well-being, she probably foresaw something too dark if she stayed where she was,
Yeah.
Maybe out in where there's fresh air and trees and grass and country like that. There's a lot to be said for it.
Yeah. And that's where she came from. Like my mom came from the middle of nowhere. And then she met my dad. He brought her into Drogheda, and she said she never heard people talking behind each other's backs. Everybody in Drogheda had to go to the doctor and were suffering with their nerves. And my mom was like, your nerves? What do you mean? And so mom was as green as we could be. And, they made everything. My granny recycled everything. They made their own clothes. They all worked hard. And then suddenly it might have been like a concrete jungle on top of a woman who was just a country woman at heart. And it's only now I understand the absolute pressure my mother must have felt being in a housing estate, a whole new environment, all that noise closing in on top of her. And, she's not a drinker, she's not a smoker, she is 74 or 5, and she's beautiful, like soft skin, always looked after herself, very, very glamorous, very elegant. But you daren't tell her that now. She'd get all embarrassed and, what are you talking about? But really, when you looked at my mum when she was young, she was like Audrey Hepburn, absolutely gorgeous. Really? And still very beautiful. And they eventually bought this ruins at the top of Coolfor in Monaster Boyce. And obviously I was about 18 or 19. So when I went to see this shack in the middle of 2 fields, I was I wouldn't have seen the potential. And my mom had already, there's an orchard there, I'm going to do this. And I was thinking, I'm so embarrassed. I'm not telling anyone this. Not telling me. My mom's lost her mind. And you would want to see it now. You would want to see what my mother has done for the last 25 years. She's donkeys, chickens, cats, everything. She's a beautiful orchard. She's landscaped the whole area. She rebuilt this little cottage, and she is like a pig in muck. She's delighted with herself.
There you go. And your health, as I say, your health is so important. And it's I suppose it's good to recognize that. Obviously, as you said, Alison, not happy on too much. She was in this concrete jungle with 4 kids, and I must admire the woman. I never met her, but she sounds like a fantastic human being. To be able to do that.
Yeah, she's strong-willed. Yeah, very strong-willed and very determined, but quiet.
Yeah, be able to do that. You got a lot of that energy from your mother, I'd say, did you?
It's only recently in the last year or so. I suppose in the last couple of years, I've really started to think about the determination that I have. And I work extremely hard, and I always have. And I could do 50 things at once, and I thought everybody could. I'm a really strong multitasker, and I often wondered, I'd be outspoken, I have to say how I feel. If I see something wrong, I speak up, and it get me into terrible trouble. I've been in loads of trouble. And yet my parents aren't like that, and my siblings aren't like that.
I'd say your mother, you got that from your mother. She mightn't have verbalized a lot of things to what you were saying to me reading between the lines, but she certainly had a determination all
Yeah,
through her.
yeah. And it's only recently that I've seen the determination my dad has as well. So
Yeah.
I do know that my mum mightn't react on the spot, but it'll stew on her and she'll think about it, and she's a bit more calmer and thinks about it, and then she will say it.
Right.
Whereas I'll say it on the spot. What did you say?
Right.
What was that?
Yeah.
And but my dad would be fiery like that. But again, he wouldn't really let people push him around. But I did see him bend over backwards to do possibly too much for people over
Right.
the years, particularly as a mechanic. He was a mechanic for years.
Yeah.
People would be, calling, will you fix this? Will you fix that? And he never chased them for money. Now, he had a staff job in Lyons' Bakery in Drogheda. He worked round the clock. He did all the transport, him and Jack Hannon, still great friends. And I think a lot of people took advantage of my dad and his goodwill. He's got enormous goodwill, my dad. He's such a generous person. Bend over backwards for you. And I think maybe because he had a staff job, and even though that wasn't big money, again, they always say, Alison, we were in the 80s, we were on our knees, but yet we did have a mortgage and a car, and that was a big thing. And my dad had a trade.
Right.
So dad fixed things for people all the time. And I think people took a lot of advantage. And I think his employers did as well, because if there was a breakdown with machinery and stuff, I always remember getting out of the bed in Newfield and opening the window at 2 a.m. Is your father there? Yeah. And you'd say, Dad, there's someone from Lyons is at the window. And he'd, I'll have to go. There's a breakdown. And he'd go, whereas the rest of them would say, I'm not going.
Back it, yeah.
And you'd hear my mum, oh yeah, Paddy, the Aegis will go, but I understand as well that Dad was very committed and kind. And so,
Well, yes, it's a bit of both, and you have to leave the individual make up their own mind, even though you might be absolutely, fuming yourself. You have to let them do it, That's the nature of the person as well. Now, Alison, when did you think yourself that you were going to have a role as a journalist or in the media, so to speak, generally, or how did you get there?
It was never, ever on the cards, ever. I was, basically, I believed as a teenager that I had a calling to join the nuns.
Oh. Alison,
yes, I did.
I was away myself study for the priesthood, so I know what you're saying,
Yeah. Oh, I really believed it. I have a very strong faith, and I do believe in a higher power. I don't believe in the church. I have no interest in what the church do, but I have a very strong faith, and I've always, for my entire life, believed someone's looking after me. And I was I suffered with the worst kind of shyness as a child and a teenager. And I was almost kind of like two people. I could be mouthy and gobby, but I was terribly shy as well, terribly shy. Even under the age of 12, I wouldn't know. People didn't even know my mother had a third child. And one day I came down the stairs and the neighbour said, who's this lovely little one? And my mum said, that's Alison. And they all, Mary, I always thought you had 2 children. And so I was very, very stuck to my mother's side, and absolutely adored my baby sister, Maria. I was allowed to name her Maria, but, I was the child that hung back. And my sister, Jean, was, always out on the road, always, go out and find your sister. She's running the roads. Whereas I was crippled with shyness. And in my teenage years, my shyness was so bad that I began to blush really badly. And so I tried to avoid brightness. I felt very sensitive in the daylight. And I was always living in fear that I'd meet somebody around the corner and go red. And that was it. It was all over. It was all over. And so when I'm wearing my mask today, I'm like, pretty they didn't have this, when I was a teenager. Because this would really help me with my shyness. I was crippled with shyness. And I
And did it affect you? Did it affect you studying and all of that, or did it affect? Did it?
No, it's weird. I always felt like I still managed to do a lot of things.
Right.
I was an Irish dancer, a very competitive Irish dancer till I was 18. That was very nerve-wracking, but I was still able to do it. And I was
Well,
doing
I was,
my
doesn't competing with other people in Irish dance doesn't give you great confidence, and I
no,
don't know. No, no.
no. It didn't give me confidence. And I danced with Eileen Martin. And someday I'm going to write a TV show about that girl. She replaced Jean Butler. All of the people I danced with went on to Riverdance. But I danced before Riverdance and was really uncool. Are you doing Irish dancing, Alison? Hate that. Ah ha ha. Rollers in your hair.
I know. Yeah, yeah.
It was really uncool.
My
And
colleague here,
doing
my
it till you're
colleague
18 was uncool. Really uncool.
here with me in the station, Mary Hone, is a judge and a teacher in Irish dancing. You know, so that's why I know a little bit about it. You know,
Yeah.
we all did it when we were small, from our generation anyway. The one,
Yeah.
two, the 1, 2, 3s. My God, I'll never forget it. But so you were dancing pre-river dance when Irish dancing was, not cool anyway, certainly not cool. But your friend replaced Jean Butler in Riverdance, you know?
Yeah, Eileen Martin did. And she became so famous herself. But I'll tell you, for a girl who was absolutely sensational, that when she went onto the stage, and we were all in crappy little halls around the country every Sunday, the rollers in the hair, off you go to Dublin, and
Yeah.
a pin would drop when that girl came out to dance. And she was tiny and thin and the nicest girl you could ever meet, and still the same. She never ever, it was like she was just brilliant, and she won the worlds all the time. She won everything, and you would hate to see her at your fest. You'd say, oh, Jesus, Eileen Martin's here, so there's no hope. Might as well go home. And yet she'd come up to you afterwards if you fluffed or if you were put out to dance with her, you knew the judge was never going to look at you. And she'd come up afterwards, are you okay? Did something happen? And you'd be thinking, this girl doesn't actually have a clue of the level of
Right.
influence and
Media.
reaction she creates in people, and she deserved everything she got. But when I left, because I was also swimming and doing competitive swimming and training to be a lifeguard, we're all lifeguards in my family, and I chose the swimming. They chose Riverdance. They became millionaires, big houses in Foxrock. And here I am, living the dream.
Did she stay in Riverdance long?
I think she did. I think she was in it for a good 10 years, possibly. But we
Right.
still speak to each other, and she's still absolutely lovely. And her daughter Anna is a singer now. And beautiful image of her. She's like a young Eileen. And I'm actually writing a play at the moment which involves Irish dance, and I'm going to try and get her to come out of her retirement. I can already hear her, absolutely not, I'm done. But I'm going to try and get her to work on it with me anyway. But I mean, I was doing all of those things where I was walking around in a swimsuit in front of loads of guys and girls, didn't care, swam, did water safety, did CPR, did the whole lot, was dancing, and yet I suffered with the worst kind of shyness. And yet when we were doing swimming in school, I could see girls saying, I'm not getting into my swimsuit. I have big ties and I'm this. And that kind of, being overweight, being self-conscious with your body, all of those issues I never, ever had. Never. My mother was a tiny little thing. We've never been overweight in our house, but it's not even that. We've never thought about it. No. And I think it was because Mum had us all out. If we weren't in the running club, we were swimming and we were dancing.
You were out, you were active.
Yeah, very, very active family. Yeah. Brian played football. And I think maybe it was just that if we were active, it never became an issue. So I now understand, the pressure that women are under, because there were girls that used to get a sick note every Tuesday and I can't swim, I've got my period, I've got a sore back. And I was thinking, but swimming is good for sore backs. But I didn't understand. They were very self-conscious about how they looked.
Are you talking about young teenagers, are you?
Pardon me. Yeah, we would have been like 13 up to 17.
Oh,
You know, and
terrible.
I just, they were, you know, they were struggling.
Yeah, there's no easy answers to that really. I come from a family of 9. There's 5 boys and 4 girls, you know, and they're all grown up now. But I'm saying that while I'm much older, I'm nearly probably a double your age, Alison. So I grew up in the late 50s, early 60s. So there wasn't so much of that. But I noticed in my own family now, they're grown up as well. I noticed that they were lucky in that the school they went to, there was a good emphasis on physical activities.
Yeah.
Whether it was kicking a ball or 2 hurley sticks playing ball, there was always the emphasis on the school sports and all of that, you know. And so that was good for them, healthy for them, you know. Actually, my daughter, she only lives, so my daughter lives in Dundalk. She married a Dundalk man for her sins, so I can't say anything against Dundalk or Drogheda, you know. They're up there, you know.
Yeah.
I love going up. There's something very quirky about county. Is there?
Yeah. Oh, there is. I mean,
I noticed that when I went up to the shopping centres and go to the shops to meet people. Just totally different than anywhere else in the country.
Yeah, and it's a very small town, but it's steeped in history, absolutely steeped in history. And you know, my dad has a huge love for Drogheda and the historical sites. So you know, Saturdays and Sundays were in the car, listening to Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, Gene Pitney, the Beatles, and going to Monaster Boyce, Newgrange, and Mellifont Abbey with a picnic. And I mean, when I look at that now, I'm so lucky. They were lovely things to do, and it you know, it opened up our world to nature, history. Yeah, it was fantastic.
You're right. All those places are still there.
Yeah.
All those, I won't say free places. I don't mean it in a mercenary sense, but they're at our doorstep, for God's sake. You don't have to be saving up to go to Disneyland. I'm not saying anything against Disney.
Yeah.
You know, you can go to Newgrange, you can go to this castle, there's historical sites, there's beautiful places around. If people just took it easy and they said, bring a packed lunch and off you go.
Yeah.
You know,
off you go.
It's as simple as that. My special guest is Alison O'Reilly on LiR Confidential on LiR Media. We're delighted to have you, Alison. You got involved. I don't mean involved in the sense that there's so many things. I'll tell you, we'll need a whole week's program to get through everything. This lady with me today, when I was reading about some of the activities she's involved in, well, I felt out of breath myself anyway, trying to read them. So I'm not going to read them out to you here on the score. But my name is Bridget. Now, I read about that. I didn't know who you were, of course. Hadn't met you, but how did that come about to you, Alison? How did you get involved in that project?
Well, you see, I'm an adoptive mother. Now, I'm a natural mother, I'm an adoptive mother and a foster parent. And I would have been legal guardian to a couple of teenagers who aren't.
Hold on a second there now. Back up a minute now. You're a natural mother, an adopted mother, and a legal guardian to they're all different things as people looking in will know.
And the fostering as well, yeah.
Obviously, you know your own mother and father.
Yeah.
And when you say you're an adopted mother.
No, I have an adopted son. My youngest is adopted, yeah.
That's what confused.
21st century family.
Right, okay. And how many have you?
I have 2 boys. So my eldest is 19, Calva, and my second is 11 on the 24th of April, Tam. And Tam is from Ethiopia. And I would have fostered as well after that. And the children I was legal guardian to now are in their 20s. So they don't need me anymore. But I suppose I've always had an interest in children's rights. And, you know, as a teenager, I would have had friends who would have had difficulties. And I suppose at that time you didn't ring the social services. They just came and stayed with you. And at one point, I had a friend who came to live with me for 6 months. She was one of the Vietnamese boat people.
Well,
The change in,
I'm from Cork myself, and
yeah, they
a
came
whole,
into Cork.
yeah, a whole heap of them arrived in the early 1970s in Cork.
Yeah,
I don't mean
yeah,
that in a wrong way, but
yeah.
and now when there's first and second generation now, when you see Vietnamese people, you know the Cork accent, speaking Cork accent, I think it's fantastic.
Fantastic. It is.
I
It
think
is. Yeah. And my little Ethiopian son with a Dublin accent.
yeah. What? How did that come about?
The to adopt my son.
Yeah.
Again, my father would have, Africa was always on the television. He was always watching things about the Maasai tribe or something else. And
Yeah.
he spoke about the Vietnamese War. My father would be, he's fairly knowledgeable about current affairs, shows a huge interest. And he always talked to us about how other cultures are and how they lived. And so when the Vietnamese boat people came to Drogheda, straight away I heard she's going to be my friend, and that's it. And she was, and I watched her grow up, and it was very difficult for her to transition, in the teenage years, different color skin, no supports there, no other black families or foreign nationals in Drogheda at the time, apart from doctors and nurses. And
Yeah.
so it was a big deal for her, and she came to live with us. My uncle fostered about 40 children, himself and his wife. My grandmother was a lone parent with 13 children, and children were children, just didn't matter. Didn't matter what colour you were, didn't matter where you were from. And maybe I just grew up like that. I don't know, but my mum always says to me when I was little, I was always asking her to adopt. Can you adopt a baby? And she was like, Alison, the country was on its knees, in a recession, and can we adopt a load of children? So I don't know. My two sisters became social care workers. One of them has worked with children and adults with special needs for over 20 years. Maybe it was something like that, but I wanted to adopt from Vietnam. I felt I knew the country very well. I've never been there, but I knew the culture. My best friend was Vietnamese. I was, so ingrained in their family as well, hanging out with them all the time. Learned about Buddhism, all about their culture.
Yeah.
And so it felt very natural to apply to adopt. And I had my son, Calva, when I was 26. And I found that extremely shocking to the system. It was an unplanned pregnancy, like half of us. And I was quite shocked and frightened throughout the pregnancy. I just felt I didn't want to have any more children. It was not something I had considered much anyway. I was already thinking about adopting and fostering. So when my son was about 3, I knew that the process at the time was very lengthy. And I knew that there was a lot of countries open for adoption. And there was 300 and 400 children being adopted into Ireland at the time. Now that's completely changed. But I knew it was a lengthy process. So I was thinking if it's 4 or 5 years, I might as well start the application, go on the waiting list.
Yeah.
I bought my first house 7 days after having my son, Calva. I left the hospital after 7 days. I was in quite long after having him, and I stopped off at Robert Daly's auctioneers and paid my deposit. I don't know what I was thinking. And so I had bought a house, but I wanted to live in Dublin because that's where the work was. My house was in Drogheda. So I wanted all of that in place, and I thought that I might be at that stage by the time I get through this application. And I was.
And you were.
And I moved to Dublin. I worked for TV3. I was making documentaries for Sky. I worked for Sky News Ireland. I worked in 98 FM. I worked all around the place, but I think for the first 5 or 6 years, I was a lone parent. I didn't go out much, didn't go on many holidays. And I just really saved hard. I saved really, really hard. And then I got a redundancy from Sky News Ireland and went straight into another job, which allowed me to free up the deposit.
Right, I see you. Yeah.
And at the time I was approved for a mortgage. It was different then. And I bought a house in East Wall, and I've been there ever since. Here it is. And I felt I was very, very lucky. And don't get me wrong now, I was paying a whopper of a mortgage. And I had to work. I was juggling being a mummy.
House now?
Pardon?
How long are you in that house you're in now?
Since 2008, and I bought at the peak.
Oh, Jesus.
So
I'm not going to ask you those questions anyway. But
yeah, it was extremely stressful. And so I was literally work. Ended up getting somebody to help me rear my son by child minding, which was, you know, I had a girl from Italy. She was absolutely brilliant. To this day, I just think she really helped me so much because I had no family in Dublin and I really needed to work. And I wanted to show my son as well that no matter how hard it is, get out there and work and do it and do things that you're happy with. But I was under so much pressure. So I eventually got to an okay place. I got my mortgage down quite a bit. Things eased off a bit, all over a lengthy time. And my application and declaration came through from the HSE, and that meant I was suitable to adopt. And at that time, Vietnam closed off for adoptions. So I had just missed it. And I had been, though, in the meantime, I had gone to Ethiopia a couple of times and brought my son, and I made a few radio documentaries. So I got to know the Ethiopian community in Ireland, got to know the country quite well. I got to know a young man on one of my trips that I went with another girl called Lisa Garnon, a friend of mine. We ended up sponsoring him to go to university for 3 years. We are always in touch. He's like my brother, I'm like his sister, and absolutely love each other. And when I decided then I would switch my application to adopt in Ethiopia because I knew about the country. And I've been there.
Yeah. And you were, I won't say you were known there, but they had seen you coming and going, you know.
Yeah, and it's an absolutely stunning country. So I changed my application and I applied to adopt a boy from Ethiopia. And obviously, it's not like it was back in the dark days where you could pick a baby. You know, it's an unknown referral of a healthy baby boy between 0 and 12 months.
Of course, you weren't Madonna going buying children.
No, I thought about it before her. But she and their celebrity status, yeah. But the great thing about Ethiopia was as well, no money was involved. There was €1,000 for legal fees, passports, flights, changing flights, all that. And I got a really nice apartment for me and Tam. And then in sort of January 2011, I was notified that this healthy baby boy had gone through all the checks and was available for adoption. I was told to go in March, and then 2 weeks before that it was changed to May. So I went out in May 2011 and I met my son the day after I arrived on the 19th of May, and I adopted him on the 21st of May. And I stayed there for 2 weeks to do a familiarization program with the carer who was rearing him in the children's home. And so I got to know him, got to know a lot about him. Again, another really nerve-wracking experience. And you do have doubts when it comes to it then. Oh God, what if this doesn't work? What if he doesn't like me? What if he doesn't bond?
And what age was the child? What age was the child?
He was 13 months. So 13 months is a child with a big memory. And people think, oh, you know, she adopted him as a baby. No. At 13 months, Tam had his attachment to his carer and his home.
Into his environment, yeah.
His environment, that's all he knew. People think, you know, isn't that great you rescued him? No. The child would have been absolutely fine if he remained where he was, but there was a reason he had to go. I'm still very much in touch with his carer, Wendy, who knew him before me. She's very important to my family. And, you know, I did see the change in him 2 weeks when he got home. He was up and walking. All his teeth came down over the next 8 months. He had a history of pneumonia, so there was loads of infections and viral infections and teeth and everything coming at the same time. Lots of one-to-one, but I couldn't bring him into the bed with me at night time. He wasn't used to that. So that was, yeah, you think now that he would now, and over the years he did, but you just had to leave him in his cot, and he suffered with really bad night terrors for 16 months. And eventually I got, I tried everything and anything, post-adoptive services, child psychology services, but really when I went to Temple Street Clinic, they said, hang on, you seem to think that this could be all springing from his adoption. There are children with night terrors who are born into that family. So stop always thinking, well, it might be the adoption, and he put him on melatonin, and it was 2 weeks, it was resolved, and that was the end of that after 16 months of hell. And but he attached very quickly, him and Calva. I never forced it. Calva came through the whole process with me, and I wouldn't have done it if he wasn't happy.
What's the difference age-wise?
Calva was 9 and Tam was 13 months.
Yeah.
So I mean, he maybe Calva was 7. Oh God.
Yeah.
It's like donkeys ago. I'm kind of sometimes wondering, going.
Yeah. And
so yeah, I had said to Calva because Calva was saying to me, Mom, he doesn't like me, and I was like, okay, do you know what? I told Calva to take time off school, and I shouldn't have. I told Calva, to make this effort. I said, you know what, go back to school. I said, because you're full of anxiety. It's all in the house. Yeah. I said, you are to just behave as if he's not even here. Carry on. I said, because you're putting too much stress on yourself. And then I wanted a natural bond just form. Suddenly, Tam was following him around the place. Suddenly, Calva was looking back at him, and then natural bond happened. I think if you try and force something like that, you can really cause a lot of anxiety. So I just let them be. They're kids. Kids know how to mix. And so I never made a big deal of it. And I mean, those two are joined at the hip now. And even though Calva will be 20 in October and Tam will be 11 in March, they are joined at the hip. And if I correct one of them, the other one's in. No, ma'am, leave them alone. That kind of thing. So they're very close. It's very natural. And I mean, when I talk about the adoption, I just think he's my son. That's it. He's my child. And he's not my tummy baby, but he's my child.
9 or 10 or 11 or something. Is that what he's now?
Tam is 11 on the 24th of April. 24th of April.
He's a dub now, is he?
He's a dub now, yeah. Doesn't know any different. Yeah. Great footballer, brilliant footballer. Stella he plays for Stella Maris, and he's played for Home Farm, but he's
Stella Maris, of course, is steeped in history. It has it's like Home Farm and Stella Maris, those two hotbeds of soccer,
Yeah.
And, they really are, Now, and so at this stage, I'm not going to ask you anything normal because,
you'll have a normal life.
You know what I mean by that. But so the kids are fine. And did you consider fostering then as well?
Yeah, I was going to adopt again. I would have liked to adopt a little girl. I found my pregnancy was very, very difficult, and I've actually found the adoption easier. Bizarre, but I did find my pregnancy quite difficult.
Yeah, I think there'd be a difference, all right. Yeah, I think there'd be a slight difference there, to see as if you knew about it.
But I
no more pushing for you.
But yeah, I mean, I always remember Geoffrey Shannon did the Children's Death Review report, which was quite shocking, and it highlighted all the children who died in the care of the state who had fallen through the cracks.
I remember when that came out. Oh, Jesus!
Shocking. And there was Melissa Mahan, Daniel McAnespy, all of those children, and that made me think that could be something you could do on a short-term basis. So I I did the assessment for fostering, and I fostered.
And how rigorous is that? Do you think that system is good?
Well, certainly the adoption course, I enjoyed it. You're there with other families. It's really an assessment of yourself. it's a whole invasion of your life, everything from your finances, like
Oh yeah, sure, yeah,
everything.
yeah.
But I still think, look, there are absolutely dreadful foster parents, and there are absolutely parents who do it for money. And I tell you, no money in the world will pay you to foster a child, because
you're right. You can't blame the system for the individual attitudes. You can't.
No, and it's a very hard thing to police, and it is better than orphanages and children's homes. But my concern is that I've seen things where I know children are fired across the system. You know, there was a couple of placements where I was told, you know, you have them for a couple of weeks, but their school is away out there. Don't bother bringing them because it's too far. And I was thinking, but they're distressed and they're going to miss school, and surely a routine is the best. Yeah, but
and kids of their own age to mix with.
Yeah, and they're already distressed, having arrived at your house, being taken from their family. So I always drove them to school and made sure they went to school, because
fostering. I don't understand it. I don't know anything about it really. But the children that are fostered, are they, generally speaking, taken from another family environment for their protection?
Not always. You could have a vulnerable family who need respite. So they get respite and support, and they're going back to that family. But there have been cases where there's domestic violence, sexual abuse, neglect. So you get all sorts of children from different backgrounds. And really, you know, what's happened in their home is really not my place. My place is to offer them happy memories in a turbulent life.
Just let me get this straight, Alison. So you're assessed, you're passed, and you're all that. Then you tell them what you're able to take one with, say, one child or one person. Is it a young adult or is it a child, or how does it work?
You're assessed for a certain age group, and I was assessed for a child under 5, but sure, I was getting kids, you know, up to 12 and 13. They'll tell you, oh, one child only because you've only got one spare room. There was one night here, I had 5 children.
Why?
Nowhere else to put them.
Oh, Jesus.
And would you just say, please, I know it's a lot, but it's just really for one night, and then we'll take the 2 away. They're going home tomorrow, you know. So,
oh, I see. So it's overwhelmed, really.
It's really, really struggling, that whole system. And I think that the thing about the fostering system today, while it's improved greatly from the awful mother and baby home days and all of that, there's still silence around it, because back in the mother and baby homes, you had the church and state imposed a code of silence by fear, bullying. So everybody knew what was going on, but you knew not to say anything. Whereas the foster care system now is sophisticated. We've got this in-camera rule, which is a very noble act in theory. You can't discuss a child that you have. You can't breach their privacy. You can't raise a flag. However, it's my experience that in-camera rule is being abused all the time to cover up failings. So, you know, as a journalist, I probably have a unique perspective, from the sense that I would have had these children in my home, but I also wrote about them. Now, I didn't write about the children I had, but I wrote about the system. Yeah. And I feel that, you know, in one particular case, I raised an awful lot of concerns, and they're still ongoing. And for that, I believe I was absolutely battered into the ground by TUSLA and the Child and Family Agency. And
now, TUSLA down through the years have got horrendous press. Now, there's no organisation gets bad press on a continuous basis without having some foundation to them. There's no journalist, not excluding yourself, worth their salt, would put their neck on the line about something, in my mind, without serious misgivings. And yet, it still goes on. Because when I hear the word TUSLA in anything, I just wring my hands myself. I've watched debate after debate after debate in Dáil Éireann hand wringing, claw thumping, and virtue signalling, and nothing concrete done. Nobody held to account. There's nobody held to account in Tussla, is there?
No. And I've been through those systems. I've been to the complaint system. My first set of investigations collapsed. I pushed again. Second complaint system set up, collapsed. I'm now through the third one. I know it's finished. It's taken a few years and I still don't have my final report. In the meantime, I switched to foster in a different department, and great, we can't wait to have you. It's going to be brilliant. Silence. Transfer meeting happened, silence. And I got an ombudsman report recently to say, we uphold your complaint, that basically, and I'm paraphrasing, your application to foster in a different department was halted or delayed because you made complaints. And you see, if you make complaints against Tussla, it's held against you. It was held against me, and I have an ombudsman report saying that.
You got it, and was that published? You published that?
I didn't publish it. No, you're the first. I've told you. You're the first person I've told.
That's a matter of public record anyway.
It is. Well, I mean, look, I have the investigation, and I'm not breaching anyone's privacy by telling. I haven't breached anyone's privacy by telling you that. That's my report.
And we're not here to slag off anybody, but I disquiet myself, that the Department of Children,
useless department, useless,
huh?
Useless.
Department of Children are supposed to be the overseers of Tussla.
No, I've gone to the Department of Children, and I'll tell you what they do. They send your complaint to Tussla, and they send you back Tussla's reply. It's not really in our remit to get involved. And so, that's what the Department of Children did to me.
And so the Department of Children don't really look after children. No,
and I've said this over and over because I have personal experience of this. I've been through these processes. I've highlighted things,
Wasn't that one, what's her name, Catherine Zavone, the Minister for Children?
Yeah.
And now we have the venerable Roderick O'Gorman as Minister for Children.
Yeah, and I just believe he's out of his depth. And I made complaints to Catherine Zavone, and all she did was pass my complaints on to Tussla and pass me back their reply. And for me,
does it look like that the government, to me, looking at this present government, put in O'Gorman into the Minister for Children so people won't complain?
Yeah, he's completely out of his depth. I'm sure he's a nice guy, and I'm sure he's.
I think there's a question. There's a question about him morally as well, dealing with children, in my opinion.
For me, I don't think he's strong enough. I don't think the department is strong enough. I don't think they're good at what they're doing. I've seen firsthand children fall through the cracks of the care system. I've experienced firsthand trying to write about Tussla, and I'm sure loads of editors in this country will tell you, why, listen, do you know what? You will get a legal letter claiming breaches and threatening to injunct your story, even when there's no breaches.
That's right, yeah.
And then what you do then is, do you know, I can't be bothered. Because of the amount of money and resources that Tussla has, no one will take them on. No one will raise the flag. And I know myself, I've had to drop stories. I've had to challenge them about these alleged breaches when I actually know the in-camera rule. And I've also felt it as a foster parent that once I opened my mouth, I couldn't foster again. And I was battered into the ground by Tussla by raising genuine concerns. And I knocked on everyone's door. And I will someday tell you of all the TDs I went to, and they did nothing. And for me, Tussla should be disbanded and investigated. And the people who are running it are like the parents you take children from. They are a disgraceful organisation.
And Alison, my special guest today is Alison O'Reilly on LiR Confidential. Alison, before we finish with Tussla, sure, the thing, the hatchet job they did on Morris McCabe said it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
That he was smart enough and other people, but how many thousands of other people are battered down, as you rightly did say? I don't know what the answer is. God forbid that my kids are grown up and gone and they're healthy, you know. God
Well,
forbid.
Morris McCabe and I are good friends. I was a witness for him in the Disclosures Tribunal, and at a time when I was under enormous pressure professionally, but I knew it was wrong. I didn't know the man, and I received a letter from Judge Charlton and the tribunal asking me, did I know something? And I did. And, you know, I had to give evidence over 6 hours, 2 days up there, and I've never ever talked about it. But I'll tell you, it's not for the faint-hearted. And if you think you can get into a witness box and tell lies, you've another thing coming. And actually, what I did find was that I never lost a wink of sleep over it. It was terrifying going in there, but it is so easy to tell the truth.
Well, there is an old saying, and I don't have to tell you, Alison, the truth will set you free, because you'll never get cut out if you're telling the truth.
Exactly. And I was ambushed in the stand, you know, with stuff, and the judge said, you want time to think about it? And I said, no, first of all, I want out of here. But I was like, no, but sure, it's not going to change what I'm going to say. You know, you might be able to phrase it a little bit better, but no.
Yeah.
And so I allowed the ambushes to happen because I knew the truth. But for me, like, he is a modern day hero, and what happened to him was disgraceful. And I will always be proud that
You're talking about the Mother and Baby report.
No, this is the Morris McCabe, the Disclosures Tribunal. Yeah. So for me, I think he's a modern day hero, and an absolutely lovely man. And what he went through really is horrendous.
Oh God, how? I often see photographs of the man. I never met him. I'd love to one time, sometime, sit down and talk to him. But how did himself alone as a human being and his family, how did they stay together? You know?
You see, for me, I suppose as a journalist, I don't see it just as getting a story. I actually would be friends for years for people I interviewed a decade ago.
Yeah.
And I'd be very aware of the struggles they've been through. I suppose I become involved in many ways, and maybe you shouldn't, but I mean, they become friends, a lot of them. And
nothing wrong with that.
I didn't know Morris McCabe, but I knew what happened was absolutely awful. And I've had a lot of friends who've taken their own life over the years. And John Wilson was talking to me, and he was like, you know, Morris McCabe is probably going to take his own life. And I remember he said that to me, and I was like, oh my God. And I knew I had got a letter from the Disclosures Tribunal. I knew I had things on my phone. I knew I had something to say. I was in a very difficult situation, but I said, you know what? I'm going to say something. And I'll never regret it that I played a role in you know, that report. Everything I said was accepted and believed. And I'm really, really will never regret it.
It goes to show, if an arm of the state, no matter who they are, whether they're there to uphold the law or whatever, dispense justice or be fair-minded, if an arm of the state, I worked as a civil servant, so I'm retired now.
Yeah.
But if they do gang up against you, your life can be hell.
Yeah.
And doors can close.
Yeah.
And never ever, you'll be suspicious of why doors are closed, but you can never prove it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the damn thing about it, you know.
Yeah. And I really take my hat off to him for persevering for 10 or 12 years and holding it together, and his incredible wife who stuck by him. And in the end, you know, you look at what happened. He raised complaints, nothing to see here. A second investigation happens. Well, maybe there's something, and he's prone to exaggeration. Public tribunal, he's a hero. So, you know, he stuck it out. But I mean, I'd say it was at a huge cost to his mental health.
I'm delighted for the man. Delighted isn't the right word, but you know what I mean.
He deserves it.
I hope he walks around now with his head held high, and I don't mean that in an argument. I'm sure he does, and I'm sure he meets people on the street wherever he walks and says quietly to himself, "You were really wrong, you know.
Yeah.
You were really wrong, and you're still going around the place like that, you know."
Yeah.
Alison O'Reilly is our special guest on LiR Confidential. We're delighted to have you, Alison, taking the time out of your hectic schedule, hectic life. I'll always keep saying that because I know more about her than you do looking in today at the moment, but you can find out more about her as well. Now, my name is Bridget. The mother and baby thing, I was talking to you in the phone call, I was talking to you yesterday about the mother and babies thing. The astonishing thing for me, and I sent a couple of emails to you and other people, is if you were out doing your garden tomorrow in East Wall, is that where you live?
Yeah.
And you came across human remains, you're obliged to report it to the Gardaí.
Yeah.
The Gardaí would come down, they wouldn't have to be asked, they'd come down automatically, seal off your back garden, and take away do a forensic search of your garden, take away all the suspicious human remains, bones, or whatever is there, and do a forensic analysis on them.
Yeah.
And that when the mother, and I was talking to Alison, when any human remains, whether they're babies or children, are found, I thought there would be an automatic Garda cordoning off the area and a full investigation as to are they human remains, who are they, what are they, there'd be their usual analysis done. But nothing like that happened, Alison. I wonder why.
No, I mean, I asked the Gardaí myself at the time, and I always remember the conversation. Human remains? Oh, you know that, do you? Oh, you know that, do you, Alison? And how, it might be famine remains, this kind of thing. It wasn't taken seriously. Like, I wrote that story in May 2014. It went nowhere for the first week. I really pushed it. I've laughed out of it. It went nowhere. And then suddenly the following week, the Mail Online contacted me and said, can we put your PDFs up of the 800 babies in a mass grave? They did. And
go away.
That was the end of it. I mean, it just went bananas. I've never, ever experienced anything like that in my career, ever. That story went around the world. It caught every headline in every major global media network. And suddenly, the Irish were reacting to the international story about the Irish. And that's what led to the Commission of Inquiry.
Now, they weren't laughing then, of course, but was there still any analysis and forensic investigation done on those human remains? Or they just left there?
Still there. They're still there to this day. And there were sample tests done in 2016 and early 2017 that identified the children as those children from the Two Mother and Baby Home, which ran from 1925 to 1961. And the children were aged from 35 fetal weeks up to 2 or 3 years. So it was definitely, confirmation of a story I did 3 years previous. But they're still there. They're all still there. And it's no longer 796 children lying in a septic tank in Tuam. There's 9,000 children in unmarked graves all around the country in these former institutions. And, they're nameless, voiceless and powerless. And pretty much like the foster children in the foster care system today, nameless, voiceless and powerless. And if you raise your hand to speak up about them, I mean, I know I'm here in 2021, still wondering why the Tuam babies are lying in a septic tank. And while the world moves on, I suppose I have kind of a responsibility as the person who broke that story in journalism, and the families that I work with whose siblings and relatives are in that grave, to keep campaigning for them to be found.
I lost track. It's not that I got bored. I wouldn't say that about any human tragedy. But as you said, there's other stories, and then one chases after another, and then you just get, it just goes off the pages.
Yeah, it does.
The whole objective.
It doesn't for me, you see.
The whole objective of an inquiry in Ireland today is to conclude it and get rid of it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what an inquiry does. I mean, it just, we've got an inquiry, stay quiet.
the inquiry into the June babies is completed. I don't
Yeah,
mean completed. They were given whatever they were given, and I always take all these with a pinch of salt. And
yeah,
that's not nothing to do with the human tragedy. It's to do with the expediency of it. And you know, they shine a light. They make speeches in the Dáil about it, and they're all wring their hands about it. And then it's put on the shelf and now be quiet now, please.
yeah. And yet these people, it's their life, and they'll always be hurt and damaged by what happened to them. But the report into the mother and baby homes is now concluded since January. They've got their state apology. The report to me was disgraceful, a complete whitewash. It blames society and it missed loads. It's just so vast. It's an absolute whitewash. It was disgraceful report, in my opinion. And I don't speak for anybody, and the survivors are the only ones who can really comment on their own experiences. But for me, it started out with 796 children in a mass grave, and it's now 2021. That story came out in 2014, and now not only are 796 children missing, there's 9,000 children from all of these homes. So for me, the story won't end. We just keep going till those children are exhumed and reinterred and named and
Alice, you got to know some people
I
directly
did.
who were looking for I won't say closure, that's a terrible thing, who were looking to find out what happened to their brother and sister, for God's
Yeah,
sake. That's all they wanted to know, really. And
yeah.
they'd be human, like anybody would, that they've lost track. And then they realised, God, they were in here, maybe they were one of them. You ever know Bridget Dolan, was it?
Bridget Dolan is at the heart of my book. My name is Bridget Dolan, and Bridget is the mother of Anna Corrigan, who brought the story of the Tune babies to me in 2014 and then introduced me to Catherine Corliss, and together we brought out that major expose. But it was a natural next step to do a book then, and I based it on Bridget Dolan, who was in the Tune mother and baby home twice. Her son, John Desmond, was born healthy and well and then died 13 months later, in appalling circumstances. Her second, she seemed to have left the home and got a job as domestic, but came back in pregnant with William in the 50s. And he's registered as dead, but he has no death certificate. And as a result of that, you're left to wonder, is that bad record keeping, or is he illegally adopted and missing?
It could be.
It just,
Yeah.
he could just be anywhere. Yeah. And you see, until that, can you imagine how Anna feels not knowing that answer?
It's terrible altogether,
Yeah, it is. They were treated so badly, but when the state takes a child into their care, they are effectively saying that they'll do a better job than their biological family. And in these cases, it's quite clear that they were treated like subhuman. I don't know what they were treated like, and just discarded, and absolutely atrocious what happened there. It's just so horrific and so big. We can't forget something like that. It's not right.
No, and nor should we. And before we close this chapter on the Tune babies, Alison, that book, Alison wrote, is My Name is Bridget, is the title of it. I was looking, it's still available, folks. I can tell you that independently because I checked it out. It's still available. I suppose the old Amazon now, with the way we're going with the lockdown as well. And I don't know, but it's still available. You wrote another book as well called The Beast of Baltinglass.
I did. I wrote that years ago when I was working in the Star. We were all into Larry Murphy at the time. It was such a big, big story.
The Man in the Van, is it?
The Man in the Van, yeah. He had raped a hairdresser, and what he did to her was just appalling. Right. Tied her up, put her in the boot of the car, brought her into the woods. How she survived, we'll never know. I actually spoke to her. She's never been identified. I did. I went down and spoke to her, and she just said I wouldn't be alive today only for those two men stumbled across this horrifying scene. And she was supposed to die. She thought that they came as well to rape and kill her, and she ran into bushes and barbed wire and everything, and they saved her life, and he jumped in the car and drove away. She shouldn't be alive, and she knows that. But there was divine intervention, I would imagine, that night. Yeah. And what he did was
Horrific.
Just monstrous. And I suppose he's now linked to a lot of those missing girls because of what he did. She could have died that night and be buried, and you'd never know. And he never surfaced, and he wasn't known to Gardaí, and he was a brilliant carpenter and a married man with, you know, small children. He wasn't known to anybody. So you have to wonder, was this a one-off, and why would it be a one-off? And then secondly, you know, what about all the other missing women, and what other people are like him out there? It's terrifying.
I know, yeah. You could overthink something as well, but not to make light of it or anything, but really, I mean, that was, and she never went on public record, did she?
No, she didn't. No. Beautiful woman now, really beautiful looking, very nice, soft-spoken, but you know.
And I have to touch on Killer in the Family.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you know, I went through a whole phase of doing a lot of crime stories, and they do interest me, but more to the point of the families who have been affected, because I've made documentaries, you know, of guilty by association and
for Cullycasha, as we're in our own here, because I personally know the sister of Jason Corbett.
Okay.
And the horrific news from North Carolina that they're out is trauma enough for them here in Limerick. I know them well. I know his sister.
Oh, and I spoke to Molly Martins at the time, and you know, just very manipulative, you know, and constantly referring to the two children as my children. It seemed like a stage performance, but there's a great interest in her, I suppose. She's very beautiful to look at, you know. She was the second wife after he'd lost his first wife so tragically. She was raising these kids, but it wasn't anything like the fairy tale. It was portrayed.
She gave an interview. I know, did you hear? She gave an interview to Niall Boylan as well.
Yeah, she did. Now, I spoke to her when I was in the Mail, and I never published the article.
Yeah.
I might publish it this week though, but she's out now, facing a retrial. Hopefully that retrial will happen. But the devastation it's caused to that family and those children is just horrific.
I know, it's just horrific. I mean, justice. I don't know what to say about it, because I mean, it's in another jurisdiction anyway. The system is if we want to examine the justice system in Ireland, we have nothing to be proud of in many, many cases as well, so to speak. Carry on, hang on. How are you coping with the lockdown? I won't say the lockdown, because I don't care. I live in Shannon at the moment, and I'm here in Limerick in the studio. I come in and out every day, and I find it easier to come in and out in the bus, which is a lot easier, public transport. Well, it's just free for me now, you see. I'm free. I'm one of the senior elders in the country, but I come in and out. But I mean, if people having something to do every day, you know, something to go to, and they're in their own house, or as we know, the 5 kilometer rule is only for certain people. We know that, Alison. You know, that doesn't apply to everybody. I think you'd accept it. Yeah.
I do, yeah.
And having parties and gatherings, they're only for the other people, are they?
The other people. No, I've been lucky. I've worked all through the lockdown.
You don't play golf, by the way, do you? You don't play golf, no?
What?
You don't play golf?
No.
There you go. Yeah, another party list.
But, no, I've been lucky. I've worked in radio and I've worked in the newspapers all throughout the lockdown. I've an art show that I run as well, and I've done some virtual shows. It's called Stay With Me, and it's based on the mother and baby homes, and it's a group art show. So I kind of host virtual shows and discussions. With that, I've had physical shows as well. But in my job as a journalist, I've been very, very busy. But also, like, I like the quietness.
You must keep us informed of the art one, Stay With Me, because I was thinking about that. I just came across it because I contacted you, and it looked magnificent, really, you know.
It is, yeah.
You know? And Stay With Me is the actual listeners, but we'll put up the links anyway with the program. Or any links you want us to put up. You can email us any stuff you're doing. I mean, we're all about publicity and publicizing as much as we can, you know. We're new to the game, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, what about you now, your day-to-day? What are you doing at the moment? you don't mind me
I'm
asking.
working in FM 104 and Q102, Dublin radio stations. I co-present the Q102 breakfast show on a Friday with Aidan Cooney, and I also work with Star.
He used to be on TV3, did he? Was he?
Yeah, he was a teacher. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, is that where Q102 is it?
Pardon?
Q102 is it?
Q102 breakfast show on a Friday with
Q102, the breakfast show on Friday morning. Alison and Aidan.
Yeah. So that's good track. Yeah, and then I write for the Star as well. So.
Oh, good. So that's excellent, Alison.
Yeah.
And the two boys are healthy.
They're all good. Yeah. I can't complain. They're lovely children, and it's my birthday today, so they've made me a
birthday. I didn't know that either. How did I miss that? April
8th. Yes, I'm a determined, fiery Aries, and so we've got cake then to have afterwards.
You have cake. Oh, I see. Is it fresh cream? It's not fresh cream.
It's chocolate and fresh cream. Delicious.
Alison O'Reilly, it's her birthday today, the 8th of April, lads. I shouldn't forget that. And do you know, Alison, we could talk forever, but I've taken a lot of your time. But we'll catch up again, if you don't mind, in a few weeks' time, maybe.
No problem at all. Yeah, anytime.
It's great. And really, I don't know what to say other than we didn't touch on your documentary making at all. We'll touch that maybe in the next program. You have a documentary. Is it gone out or is it Behind the Crime? That was on TV3, was it?
That was on TV3. Yeah, I made that, and I made a few others. Yeah. So I'm working on one at the moment about the Tune Babies for ITV, but I'll keep you posted on that one. Excellent.
On the Tune Babies, I mean, we'll try and keep that alive as well, because to me,
it's very important. Yeah.
Burying the hatchet on these things is never healthy for a society, and a society as small as the one we're in, it's never healthy, never healthy. Whitewash.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Using the cover of COVID for all these excuses, to me, doesn't wash it anymore, No. We all have to get on with our lives. Alison O'Reilly, it's been an absolute joy to have you on, and we're delighted.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No, I really enjoyed that.
When we have this show done and dusted, we'll email you on a copy of it, for your archives.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thank you, Alison, for your time with us today. And the very best of luck with all your future projects. And we will keep you posted on our end as well.
Thank you.
Take care now. Take care.